Just gonna do a quick intro of who you are and what neighborhood you're representing.
I am Angela Martinez, and I am the Midtown Historical. I change every month.
Yeah. Midtown?
Okay.
Sergio Devora Najera, El Pueblo neighborhood.
Zach Gingrich, Gaylord, Riverside.
Tom James, North Riverside.
Okay. We will call this meeting to order. We don't have enough people for approval, so I guess we'll just wait. Just go ahead and skip to, does the fire department have an update? Is anybody here? No? Police department have an update?
I don't have a lot, but.
Which way get my face? Hello, I'm Officer Casey Widener. I'm the Community Policing Officer for 49 Beat, which is the beat we are in right now, North Wichita, 29th, all the way to like Park City area. Don't have a lot. What I want to bring up though, larcenies to auto are kind of going up slightly, but what we're seeing is the main trend of those is in business parking lots and apartment complexes. So not so much just your normal neighborhood larcenies to autos, it's bigger areas where more cars are easily accessible. So just a reminder, even if you don't live in an apartment complex, lock your cars at all times. Don't leave your valuables in them, especially guns. We're seeing lots of guns taken. So take your stuff inside and lock your doors. I am having some issues. Just make sure that the school has started, that we're following all of the crosswalks and all of the school zones. Pay attention. We had a kid struck this morning going across in a crosswalk. Somebody just not paying attention, didn't see it. So we're going to go out, or I'm going to go out with some of the traffic guys tomorrow morning and start enforcing some of the driving through the crosswalk. So just when you're in a school zone, make sure you're paying attention to the crosswalks and kids, and they're all over the place now that school's started. Last thing I want to bring up, I don't know much about it because I'm not on the south side, but it is, I think, part of District 6. There was a homicide this morning downtown in Old Town outside of an establishment. They got into an argument. One man was stabbed to death. And the suspect is in custody for that. So just wanted to bring that up, and I think that's all that I have. Any questions for me?
There was a bunch of activity at the river last night. I watched, saw it right off River Boulevard. Looked like maybe somebody had gone in the water, or.
I haven't heard anything about anybody going in the water.
Okay.
I don't know anything like that.
But that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah, not that I've heard anyway.
I'll try to find out.
Yeah, we saw several, cars moved.
Any questions, Army?
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Officer Mike Johnson, Community Policing out west, 11 Beat. Not really much, but had a very successful, does everyone know Second Chance Thursday? When I say that term, very successful at the Old City Library 2 weeks ago. It's getting more popular, and that's what we want. I'm trying to now start soliciting some funds, hint, hint, to start advertising whatever we can do to get citizens more involved. So, for example, if someone's at work and they have the Second Chance Thursday water bottle, and somebody's like, man, what is Second Chance? Oh, yeah, I got my license. And by the way, I was able to get a job or whatever, a career. So that's what we're trying to do, just to enhance that for the city, because it's a great thing. I wish I had the numbers, how many we cleared so far, but I know when we first started this program, it was around 16,000 traffic warrants, and so we've been doing it for around a year and a half, and my guess right now we cleared up around 1,000. So some is better than none, but we want to keep it going. Other than that, my major concern on my beat was 1359 North McLean, and if you don't know anything about that resident, there's nothing to know now because we got it all cleaned up, got it condemned. In the city, even CBD, I gotta give them kudos because they worked very hard, and with the city lawyers in downtown, and we got that all completed. It's right at 13th and McLean. If you go by there, you wouldn't even known that it was a house there, but it's now just a flat piece of dirt. So very happy with that because we had probably 40-some calls there within 3 weeks of vandalism, burglaries, and then one homicide. So we're happy to get that now cleaned up. Other than that, West Side is pretty quiet right now that we know of, other than the death over in Swanson Park. But I can't talk too much about that because that's under investigation. But any questions?
Yeah, for the Second Chance Thursday that you did 2 weeks ago, where's the funding come for that?
There's no funding.
Well, how'd you fund the one you did?
We just do it the city. It's on our time. The chief has given us permission to go and put this program on, and we do it. We get paid by the city to do it.
So you do it on the clock?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So, but I want the funds to come in so we get, like, the billboards, if somebody's on 96 or Kellogg, and we put an advertisement up, Second Chance Thursday. Well, I mean, that's what I want. I want the advertisement more, so everybody can see it, yes. Because it helps all of us. Because there's only 3 reasons why somebody leaves an accident. 1, suspended, no insurance. You could be driving a quick trip, get rear-ended, they're gonna take off. You're mad, I'm mad because I don't know who it was, you don't know who it was. So we're just trying to curb that down. Yes,
Are you paying attention to what types of warrants or the types of infractions that people are coming to Second Chance Tuesday? I'd just be curious if there was any particular kind of infraction that people more likely to come and try to get absolved.
we've got them from seatbelt to speeding. We're not allowed, the judge would not allow us right now to do a DUI. Okay, he still wants to see them. But other than that, if they come to us, because we have the state there, right there, and then if they can give them a restricted driver license right on the spot, they'll do it. We have the city there, if it's a city payment, the girls are phenomenal. There was a guy last week, 2 weeks ago when we were there, he had $1,400 in back payments, and he knocked $300 off right off the bat. I said, make this payment, gave him the credit card, put some down, went over to the state and said, like, here's a restricted. So, and everybody's happy. Everyone's happy because they get their life, at least get it restricted. The longest person that I think that we had, he was suspended over 21 years, and his wife was driving him around everywhere. And he came and got his restricted, and he came in that afternoon to bring his son, and his son got it restricted. So it is a program that is working.
Just to reinforce your point about, the hit and runs and such, is at the Bike Ped Board, they coordinated with KU Med Center,
Okay.
and they did a decade worth of a study on bike and pedestrian accidents with vehicles, and they were seeing a rate of 35 to 50 a year of hit and runs. So
Increase, yes.
multiple, probably once a week.
Yes.
On your highway.
Absolutely, especially more in the summertime too, because it's getting ready to get colder, they're gonna stop riding all that, but yeah, but pretty much, I don't know the statistic, but if you see an adult, older adult, riding a moped, he ain't had a license, but you don't have to have a license under 49 cc's. Okay, you can just drive, but you have to be insured. And that's the chance they take, so. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Safras. I work for the Wichita Police Department. I'm a sergeant. I'm in charge of the crime analysts and also our technology section. We work in the investigations up on the 6th floor of City Hall, okay? I'd like to thank everybody for allowing us to come tonight and talk to you. On the direction of Chief Moore, we started a new initiative, and we're just going to talk briefly about that. I've got Senior Crime Analyst Jeff Vale over here. This is kind of his brainchild, and it's very neat program. It's very reminiscent, a lot of parallels to community policing, that philosophy that we have been utilizing for several years, a couple decades actually, on the police department. But we're kind of taking it to the next level with this program, okay? This initiative is going to include data, and it's going to be data-driven, it's going to be place-based. Real similar to what you just talked about, Mike. A location where there's problems, a other organizations within the city come in and we take care of a problem together, which includes community. Now, when I say community, I don't mean a specific demographic. I don't mean one block in a neighborhood, that community. I'm talking about City of Wichita and every one of us. We're all community, okay? And that's what we talk about when we're talking about community involvement in this. And stakeholders, that's what we're talking about. And some people has anybody heard about this program, risk train policing? You're shaking your head a little bit.
Yeah, well, I just heard that there was a meeting about it a few days ago, correct?
You're right, yes, sir, there was,
I
yeah.
think if you
A
do.
lot of people there, it was a long meeting, very long meeting, but it was very productive meeting. But currently, District 6 isn't influenced by this particular program. There are certain geographic areas within the city that have already been selected, and we're not trying to exclude anyone, it's just that it just didn't fall that way this time. This is very dynamic, though, too, and it's constantly changing. So, not to say that once we get an area that we are focusing on, crime rates brought down, then we can move to another area, and, you never know what tomorrow's gonna bring. So, Jeff Vale has some information that he's gonna pass on. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to come out and talk real quick. I know you're gonna have questions afterwards, and Jeff and I can try to help you out, understand. And even if we need to have an additional meeting for further clarification, we are more than happy to do that, okay? Or phone calls or anything, okay? So you can reach out to us at any time. We'll take the time to talk and explain things. And that's what this intro is all about, is just making sure that nobody's caught off guard and people understand what it is that we're trying to do as a police department and coming together with our community. Okay, so Jeff?
Thanks, Sergeant. Again, my name is Jeff Hill. I'm one of the crime analysts with the police department. As Sergeant alluded to, we're creating a public safety collaborative with WSU. And so basically, they'll be hosting this. And the whole point of this is to use data-driven analytics to show what places are most at risk for particular types of crime patterns to happen at. So risk terrain modeling is basically a diagnostic tool that helps us identify the environmental conditions that contribute to crime problems.
I'm
So-
sorry, can you say the second, you said risk, a word?
Terrain modeling, yeah, so. And so basically what we're doing is we're looking at all the different types of location types in Wichita. And so we're looking at all the different locations for bars, nightclubs, bus stops, apartment complexes. Any type of location that you can think of, we've mapped out on a map. And then what we're really interested in right now is gun crime, because of course, gun crime has been seeing an increase since around 2015 or 2016. And so what we're doing is we're mapping out where all these gun crimes happen in relation to where all these different types of locations are. And so what this model does, and this model, risk terrain modeling, was developed by Rutgers University. And so what it does is it shows you what types of locations correlate with gun crimes, at least for what we're doing right now. And what we've seen is there are out of around 50 or 60 different variables, different types of locations that we put in, around 15 came back as being significant, as having high correlations with gun crime. And some of those examples would be hotels, convenience stores. Our model showed that for the city, if you're within 300 feet of a hotel, the chances of a gun crime happening are 6 times higher than anywhere else in the city. Any other type of location, right? Either one, a hotel or a motel. And so it's just based off of the different types of locations that we have available to us through public records. And then, so another big risk factor would be convenience stores. So convenience stores would have another 4 times more likely chance of a gun crime happening within 300 feet of a convenience store than anywhere else in the city of Wichita too. And so what we're doing is we're using this with WSU, and we're going to create a collaborative with a lot of organizations and neighborhood associations within Wichita. And we're focusing on these areas where we have a lot of these overlapping high-risk locations, and we're going to try to get to, we're going to try to identify how people interact with these locations, and then develop strategies with all these different organizations on how we can kind of mitigate the potential for gun crime to happen at these locations. So I think right now Wichita State is tentatively scheduling a meeting for mid-October, around the 18th to 20th for the first meeting. But we're hoping to have a good turnout, and we're hoping to actually formulate an overall strategy for combating gun crime in these locations based off of the particular locations in these areas, and not on people, of course. So there's been a couple of cities that have done this already. Newark, New Jersey, it has been kind of a pilot agency for doing this. But also Omaha, Nebraska has really implemented this data, or this public safety collaborative mindset for decreasing certain types of crime in these high-risk areas. So it's a pretty big project, but we're really excited about what it could bring for us. Any questions?
I mean, I have so many, but maybe this isn't right. I mean, one question is, how on earth do you, it sounds like location, you're like, we have 50 different types of locations. They could be a bus stop, they could be a convenience store, they could be that sidewalk panel over there, or that blade of grass is a location. What rationale are you like naming these nouns as locations?
So these are just places where you could pick out, like, say on like, from like the appraiser's office, right? Any type of locations, like a post office, what would be identified as a post office, as a bar, as a, we're also using like Evergy data. So we don't have a good database for vacant housing, but we're trying to use addresses that don't have any electricity to take that place. So residences without any electricity or vacant housing would also be a big risk factor for some parts of the city. So we're going to try to work with Evergy, MABCD, to focus on these locations where we have these high risk factors, and then try to, you know, alleviate the potential interaction people have with these locations for gun crimes to occur.
So then how would you be, like if you're choosing these locations, you're like, maybe it's these places with no electricity. Like, how are you dealing with bias going into how you're determining what the set of variables are ahead of the results that you're going to get? Because that sounds like it's very subjective. Like, I think houses with no electricity might be a problem, and so let's figure that out instead of, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of bias that could go into that.
And we were trying to think of basically every location type that we could. So we put in schools, libraries, but the model only picks up significant factors that correlate with gun crimes. So anything that wasn't significantly correlated wasn't excluded from the model. So we try to get as many different types of locations as possible, and it's still a work in progress. So we're still thinking of like other types of locations like dump sites, right? So we have a database for dump sites. So we're going to start integrating that into the model to get better results.
And I think the last one that I'll go with right now is, well, okay, it's a subset maybe. How transparent will your modeling and all of this be? Like, can I look at the data that you're using going into it, and can I look at like the names or types of locations or like the results that you're getting as well?
Yeah, so this is also kind of big for us too, but we're going to try to democratize the data. So all these models, all the outputs are going to be available to everyone. We've already been handing them out to everyone. We're going to create dashboards for these areas that we're focusing on to show like at least the crime increases or decreases for these areas. Everything that we would give to our officers, we're going to give to the public and to the stakeholders in these areas.
And you said you'd already been handing this out?
Uh-huh.
And can you hand it out to the staff?
I brought one copy, but we have a digital
We take
copy
it.
too that we have also.
But I think to Zach's point, you said outputs, and he referred to inputs.
Mhm.
So data that's going into the model in public accessible data, but you have put it in formats and arranged it in a way differently, obviously, since you have a new model.
Yeah, and basically what we're using is just locations for where the gun crimes happen, and then the locations for each of the, like, location types. So we map out all the bus stops, and then we see which gun crimes, and this could be anything from someone being shot to someone having a gun pointed at them to a criminal discharge of a firearm. And we put those on a map too, and we see what types of locations correlate with the gun crimes. So I mean, it's kind of crude in one sense, but then on the other, it actually gives you some valuable data to start with to see what your real issues are.
So basically, you're looking at where those areas overlap.
Yes. So the most overlapped areas where you have a lot of these risky locations, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that these are criminal locations.
Correlation.
Because, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, where we have a high overlap rate of these, along with a lot of gun crimes, those are the areas that we'll be focusing on first. And we have 4 police bureaus, and each bureau will have one location that they're focusing on to begin with.
These are reported crimes then?
Yes.
So are we also looking at how heavily policed these areas already are going into that?
That's
Right.
not,
Because that could matter in terms of like how the police are seeing that neighborhood or that location. A quick trip on the edge of town or in Mays isn't gonna have as much police presence as a quick trip downtown.
mhm.
And so there might be some problems in terms of the amount of data in particular areas would be more robust because you have more police there, right?
Yeah, and most of these are citizen-reported incidents, but yeah, we're getting the narratives from both the officers and the public in these areas too, so we can build one full narrative on what's really going on here.
Okay, I'll be curious to see how well you get that. Yeah.
But anyway, here's the risk factors right there, so you guys can pass around, and then we'll also give you guys a digital version of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
If I could, is one statement, one question is, I hear you talking about using looking for the correlation of risky places, we'll call it. I think it would be important to make sure to not lose sight of the places that aren't risky, to avoid, you want to call it survivorship bias. And also that could give clues on what things may mitigate these risks that are riskier in other places. So for example, if churches are very low on this, what is it about the churches? And that might provide solutions in other places. The question I have is, it seems like right now that you're focusing on correlation, and I don't mean this in an argumentative way, correlation without context. Is there a point where you're looking at transitioning from correlation to either causation or analyzing the psychology of the place? Because, for example, what comes to mind when you say hotels and convenience stores is, it seems like to me that those patrons, compared to someplace like a neighborhood restaurant or a neighborhood park, patrons at those two locations are probably going to be less connected to the community. So maybe that's why they're a risk, is because the perpetrator of the crime knows that these people know nothing about where they're at.
Yeah.
So is there a point where you're looking at trying to make the transition, or is this just a data collection and we use that data someplace else?
So the RTM model is just a diagnostic tool for like getting a good view of what types of places correlate to the gun crime to start out with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, that's when we got to go to the people who live in those areas or who are familiar with those establishments, to the officers, to find out, how the people interact with these locations that allow for gun crimes to happen there. So yeah, you're right. Like the RTM model is just the beginning part of it. And then from there, we have to build off of that. But it gives us a starting point that we previously wouldn't have been able to narrow down to.
That's all I have.
Do you have wooded areas as one of your crime areas? Because I live along McLean Boulevard, right across the street from the woods, and we hear not constant, but frequent shooting over there. It's very hard to get 911 to believe that we know what we're talking about. Even when you produce an expended bullet that's gone through somebody, it's hard to get them to believe anything. Do you have wooded areas as a high crime area?
Wooded areas? Parks was one of the risk factors, and I believe for the city, it may have come back as a risk factor. I know in a couple of bureaus it did.
And the other thing is, I would point out that there's a world of difference between the Marriott Motel, for instance, at the airport, whatever that thing is at the airport, and some motel on South Broadway. If you lump all hotels and motels together, you're putting apples and oranges in the same basket, I would think.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I'm wrong.
And so, say for the city, hotels are 6 times more likely to have a gun crime occur at them. But then,
It's like the Marriott.
but then when we just focus on Patrol West and West Wichita, that jumps up to I think like 12 or 13 times higher. And a lot of that is because of the West Kellogg area, and that's one of our areas that we'll be focusing on too. That's actually one of our areas. But you're right, not all hotels are going to be the same, right, in their actual risk factor. But this just gives us a starting point, and then from there, through the narratives, through talking with people and through talking to officers, we can determine which hotels are the risky ones, especially through like calls to service and stuff like that. But it allows us to narrow our focus, like with MABCD and other government organizations, other grassroots organizations. It allows us to narrow our focus and to organize a strategy to deal with those problem hotels that are increasing the risk factor.
Can I add one thing to that? And just like Jeff Bell just said, whatever you do, when you're hearing those gunshots in the woods, don't stop calling, okay?
Well,
Please.
I get tired of arguing with one.
Well, I don't want you to call it arguments, but at the same time, that is the information that we are able to hone these models in with, okay? So 2 other components to this is engagement with the officers. We set up on the 6th floor, Jeff looks at stuff all day, I do my thing, we're not on the streets working the streets, okay? But that information that we get from the patrol officers, because we've had meetings with patrol officers, to sit down and say, okay, what's going on in this area? And some of the stuff that we're learning is incredible. Same with, please, go ahead, sir.
One of the things that I've been battling 911 is, they do not recognize that gratuitous informants in Kansas are not protected under the exceptions to this Open Records Act. Are you familiar with the Kansas Open Records Act?
I am.
And it has a paragraph that lists exceptions, and there's something like 23 exceptions to disclosure. And your paid informants are protected.
Are you wanting to remain anonymous?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And they don't.
Just tell 911 dispatcher you don't want to be contacted.
But they persist, and they'll send an officer to your door, and there's somebody out there with a gun, and I don't want that person coming back out.
I can say that,
Okay.
I lived on 15th and Holyoke for
Yeah.
many years. Lots of gunshots in that area. I always called it in. I always told them that I did not want to be contacted, and I never had them contact me when I said I didn't want to be
One
contacted.
other thing you can do is ask the dispatcher to have, because that is, you're right, you're spot on. The dispatchers want a point of contact. Just ask the dispatcher to call you on the, or have the officer call you on the phone. Do not show up at my door, have them call me on the
But
phone.
that can be discovered, that call can be discovered by the, and I've discovered it myself.
Yeah,
And forced 911 to turn over the disc.
okay,
So I don't want to be discovered by somebody that's out there with a gun.
okay. You got me then. I don't know what to tell
And
you.
when those people actually called my answering set and threatened me, the police have not taken effective action to shut them down.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you for that. You're right, yes, it could be discovered, but you're talking about people who are just randomly shooting guns off. I don't even know if they would, I mean, they have obviously a disregard for public safety. Do they have the wherewithal to do research and do a core request? I mean, I don't know.
They have the wherewithal to come up from Mexico and kill somebody.
Okay.
Okay. Susan, do you have a question?
Yes. Almost lost it. So right now you're making a map and you're building the language so that when somebody so that when these things happen and you say it's at a motel on North Broadway, you all know what you're talking about, and it helps you collect that data. But after you get this all mapped out, and you have a hotspot, I don't know what else to call it, but a high risk factor area, then what? You control it more heavily?
So the police will have one function in this. We'll have our own lane that we stay in, but this is really for this data collaborative that we're trying to create, well, that WSU is creating, where we're hosting all these other stakeholders, right? Because the police alone, like, we're not able to get rid of all these problems, even the government agencies, but we're hoping that by including all these different organizations and we're able to focus all of our efforts in this one area, the police just being one part of this, at that point, then we can make a real impact.
Are there best practices from Newark or Omaha that you've learned from in that?
So we've been talking to Newark. They've been pretty good. A lot of the research has been done on Newark. Kansas City has also done it a little bit up there too. But yeah, we participated in we've attended a couple of Newark's meetings online just to see how exactly they do it. And we're getting in the talk with Omaha because they've been able to enact a lot of community engagement, stakeholder engagement in these areas. And so we're really trying to learn from them too. But they're the two agencies in the US so far that have really stepped up.
Okay, one more.
Okay.
You said earlier this is location-based. You're not looking at people right away. You're choosing these just based on whatever noun. But on here, we've got gang address, parolee address, probation address. Those are all very specifically particular people that you're looking at as a data thing. So it isn't the case, or did I just mishear? I mean, how are you determining the locations? Because you are targeting people in this data collection.
Those are certain types of locations that we keep track of.
There are certain types of people that you're keeping track of. If it's a gang address, it's because you know a gang member is there, right? They don't have a business, right? It's not like a corner store run by the gang.
Yeah.
It's that person's house.
So we're trying to use databases, I mean, both publicly and then also privately available, and that we have access to on our own also.
So to track people.
You're right. We do have databases where, like, we do track parolees and stuff like that, but we're just using the locations to see if there's any type of correlation.
It seems like a really, like, a way to not say the thing that you're saying.
If there's not gun crime or criminal activity going on, we're focusing somewhere else.
But you're looking at the place that the people live.
It's there, it's identified as a risk factor.
Because you chose to make it a risk factor.
Well, we can make anything a risk factor.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a problem.
you're correct that
What's the
there,
criteria by what you're doing? You're saying it's only locations. But gang address, parolee address, those are not locations at that point. They're not like library or bus stop. They're, this dude lives here. That's what that is. So it's not the case that you're picking merely locations.
That's
And
where
you're
the
making a
data
decision.
drives it.
You're making a
That's where
decision
the
to
criminal
include people.
activity drives it, though.
You think that someone lives there, that's the criminal activity that drives it, but that's a
No, the gun
precondition
crimes.
of the,
We've explained that, the gun crimes.
so
right, but you don't have to pick someone's house as your location that you're looking at.
you're right, there is a subjective element that goes into this, and like, the model isn't gonna be perfect. But we're just trying to get the most well-rounded, like, model that we could get. And so we're thinking about every type of different location that we can. We're putting it into the model and we're seeing what comes back as a high correlation.
Is there a location on here registered gun owners?
We don't have, no, there isn't.
Okay, so I mean, there's problems with, we're not getting the whole thing when you're saying it's only location, but also some of these people too.
Can you add that to your list?
If someone has a database of that, of locations, then we could. And that's the thing, this is still a work in progress, right? We're still finding different location types to add into this
Because
because,
we remove some of these locations, I think would be the thing. Like, if it's something that's targeting someone's address, where they live, you're saying it's not merely locations. This person's address is now one of our locations. Let's take that out, stick to locations, right?
We're not focusing on particular addresses, though. We're just using it as an overall risk factor.
Gang address, parolee address.
Okay, well, we can think about taking those out then.
You won't, but I mean,
Well, thank you. Yes.
Several years ago, I attended a seminar down at the main library. It's called the Adult Learning Center now. And Gordon Ramsay was on a panel with a bunch of other people, district attorneys and stuff like that. And they were looking at the bias in the criminal justice system, racial bias in the criminal justice system and so on. And one of the things Ramsay said was that we're no longer gonna patrol beats, we're gonna patrol individuals. And of course, later we got the gang list and stuff like that. But it was very, and I wrote that down. I mean, I was astounded. You know, this is Big Brother watching you and me. And that's a matter of public record. And he's on camera saying that. And so I wonder how this squares up with what Ramsey said a couple of years ago. You're talking about locations. He was talking about patrolling people, the troublemakers in our community. The two don't seem to square up. Are you doing both? Have you flipped from doing people to locations?
So I think my question would be, when are you going to start being able to share any of your data, or what would the follow-up be?
So the collaborative meeting that WSU is hosting is mid-October.
Okay, perfect. If you could make sure that I get an invite for that, I'll be sure to distribute it through the DAB and then share it on our social media outlets.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
Thanks.
What will the next step be after the meeting? What's the purpose of the next meeting, I guess?
To get all the potential stakeholders and collaborative members like in one room and discuss what's going on, and then try to develop a strategy and like different ways that different organizations can help to reduce the risk factors associated with some of these location types.
And the community is considered the stakeholder, is that what you meant earlier? So it's not just gonna be some isolated groups?
No,
Or
and that's,
community involvement?
in the meetings that we've had so far, we want to make sure that it's grassroots organizations in Wichita that are a part of this. And they're really driving it.
Thank you, appreciate it. It looks like the fire department snuck in. See the update. Great. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Great questions, everyone.
Thank you, Sarge.
Captain Mundell from Fire Station 3 over at 32nd and Broadway. This last month in District 6, we had 3 structure fires, 1 accidental, 1 still under investigation, and 1 was undetermined, for a loss of about $35,000 between the 3 of them. A couple highlights, Station 23 at 13th and West opened up today. They've already made a couple calls out of there. They're running 1 fire engine with 4 personnel on it, and they're planning on being there throughout the construction of the Amon Street Bridge. So, we were able to obtain a SAFER grant through the federal government for staffing. We had a $10.2 million awarded to us, so we're going to be able to hire 42 more firefighters and put 2 more trucks online, the aerial apparatus. I believe they're going to use 2 of our reserve apparatus and get those on track, as I think in the springtime is when they're planning on putting those into service. So that was kind of big for us to get that funding for those extra firefighters. Fire Prevention Week starts next week on October 9th. It's the 100th year anniversary of Fire Prevention Week, so we'll be pretty busy next week going to schools and daycares and other community events like that, talking about fire safety. So, any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
How's the actuator coming along at the fire station by the car wash? Did it get replaced?
For the street light,
For the stoplights?
for the stoplight on
Traffic lights.
at Station 3
Yeah.
7.
or 7. I don't know on that one. They don't really tell us guys at the other stations about that kind of stuff, but I can check on it.
There wasn't money for it, so I was hoping maybe some of this money would
Yeah.
fix that.
This one, since it's federal grants, it's pretty straightforward what it has to be spent for, because they wrote the grant for the positions to fill the apparatus, so we have to spend it on that.
You said 42?
42.
Where are you gonna find those at?
Good question. We have a class of 15 going right now, and the plan is to hire another 15 or 20 as soon as that class is over and just keep them up. They did recently make a recruiting position. One of our captains went downtown for a 40-hour week, and his full-time job is just going out and trying to recruit at local colleges and high schools and job fairs and things like that. So hopefully we'll be able to find the people to fill those spots.
Hopefully my son will be one of those.
There you go. Get in the line.
What's the starting pay?
Well, the contract hasn't been finalized yet, but I think starting pay is going to be around 19 something an hour for a starting firefighter.
Is that enough to bring some people back that left? You know, okay?
It might be. We typically draw more people in than lose them. We've lost a few over the last few years to bigger departments and more pay, but the smaller departments will probably be losing more people, you know, to come to the bigger cities and more calls and more money.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Library update.
Good evening, Sarah McNeil with Wichita Public Library. Got some things to share with you today. So some exciting things that are coming up in October. It looks like this Saturday, the Advanced Learning Library is hosting their Tech Day. And so this is an opportunity for us to pull out all our tech gadgets and all of our tech things, and we're just gonna put it in the big conference room and let people try things out. So our VR, our 3D printers, we have this amazing digital drawing tablet we bought with a Google grant that we had to kind of spend money quick. And so it's this really neat table that hasn't been used. We haven't used it for programming. So we're just going to pull out a bunch of different stuff and let the public use it. You don't have to register. You can just show up. It's from 10:30 until 5 p.m., so all day long. And then there'll be prizes that they're handing out every hour. So if you can't make it the whole time, just drop in and see what you can do. One really exciting program series we're doing here at Evergreen in this room, starting on Thursday evening, is Music Theater Wichita reached out to us in the spring, and they said they had this amazing instructor that was coming to Wichita, and she wanted to offer free programming, and she wanted to partner with us. And she chose the movie Encanto. And so what she is going to do is facilitate a program series Thursday evenings from 5:30 to 6:30. It's for school-age children, so 5 to 11. And this is amazing because it's free. Normally they charge for this series, or they charge for their programming, Music Theater Wichita, but they wanted to offer it to area children. So if you know any kids in the area that love to sing and dance or play act, invite them. Even if they don't, it's a great opportunity for kids to gain that exposure and then, build that love of music and theater. So there's no registration required. You can come to one, many, or all of them. But again, it's Thursday evenings in this room from 5:30 to 6:30. But we do ask that they be in school 5 to 11 because it's going to be hard to corral a bunch of young aspiring actors. One thing I want to note is next Monday, we are going to be closed, or most of our locations will be closed. The library will be closed. If you have customers that want to come use the Resource Center, they'll have their doors open and you can. But we're doing our in-service. We do it every year on the same day, the day that we shall not say, but next Monday. And this is a great opportunity for us to all gather and share our cultural knowledge and experience, learn new things. And we all take pride in getting to take time to do that. So sorry, we won't be open to help you, but we'll be open on Tuesday. If you're looking for new reading recommendations, the Read ICT Reading Challenge, they're having a book swap. So this is something that they used to do before COVID, and then they kind of brought it back this year. But basically, you just bring books that you want to get rid of, and then you can take books that you want to take home. You don't have to bring anything. You don't have to take anything. There's no pressure or obligation, but it's just a way to mingle and meet other people in town and share your books. And if you have any free little libraries in your neighborhood, this is a great place to, gather up books and take home with you. So that'll be on the 15th, not this Saturday, following Saturday, from 10:30 till 12:30. And they're really fun events. So if you have time, you should drop in. It's pretty cool. They're trying to do it quarterly, but again, I think COVID kind of stopped it for a while. Next month is our Kansas Reads to Preschooler. So the State Library of Kansas chooses a book, and I was actually on that committee this year. And then we send that book to libraries around Kansas, and we have this whole month where we celebrate the same book. We do programming around it. We try and get these free books out into the hands of kids in the community. And it's just it's kind of like the Big Read, but for early literacy, and it's just focused on one book. So we'll have programming going on the whole month of November, but in particular, November 14th through 18th, we'll read the book, and it's called Not a Box by Antoinette Portis. So if you aren't familiar with it, it's a really simple book. She writes and illustrates it. It's all about this bunny who discovers a box, but doesn't see it as a box. He or she or they think it could be anything. And so it's all about building on your imagination and seeing something and turning it into something new. So
What's the name of that book?
it's called Not a Box.
Not a box.
Not a Box. We have it here. She has other books, and you're welcome to check this out. They kind of all have the same illustrative style, very simple drawings, simple lines, not too colorful. Not a Box, Antoinette Portis.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And then Rockwell's doing a dedicated story time for that on Friday, November 18th. And then one last thing to note, we're hosting Fort Hays Mobile Planetarium at the Advanced Learning Library. This is on Monday, October 24th, and Tuesday, the 25th. So from what I can gather, there's going to be all these drop-in sessions, and you're going to be learning about how to track the stars and the moons and the planets, and we'll have those expertise on staff to help you. I think they're also going to pull out some of our telescopes and show the public how to use those. That's something that's part of our Library Things collection that you can borrow, but if you put a hold on one, you have to wait a long time, and like myself, I waited 6 months and then I couldn't see anything with it, so this will be a great way for you to get exposure using the technology, and then if you want to rent it, you can, or borrow it, you can do that later. And one thing I did want to say, I mentioned this at our last AB meeting, but Amnesty Week just finished on Sunday. It was recorded that we had 158 items that were returned, and these were long overdue items that people didn't want to return because they didn't want to pay for. We took them back in whatever condition they were, and we waived the fines attached to those. And that equated to about 39 people getting their library cards back in good standing and being able to use them. So it was a little smaller number than we thought, but still pretty great that we could get that many people back on track. Does anybody have any questions for me? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Looks like there's no scheduled public agenda items, so we will.
Councilman Ballard,
Yes.
can we go back up and approve the minutes for the September 12th meeting? We do have a quorum from our data.
Sure. Anybody like to make a motion?
I would like to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Sure. Is there anyone here to speak on an off-agenda item? No? Okay. We're gonna move on to new business. Case 2022-34.
Good evening, council member, DAB members, and citizens. How many of you are here for this side?
This for the sign?
For this, yeah, the off-site sign? Okay, all right. This is for a conditional use permit for an off-site sign within 300 feet of residential zoning or residential uses. It's generally located between I-135 and North Hydraulic and within 1/4 mile of East 37th Street North. The proposed use is a 14-foot by 48-foot off-site billboard sign. Now, I'm going to actually go over quite a bit of information, but I just want everyone to be kind of up on the same speed and know some of the factors behind this decision or this case. The applicant is requesting a conditional use to permit the construction of an off-site billboard sign within 300 feet of residential zoning and residential uses. The property is zoned general industrial. The subject property is currently developed with a vehicle sales office and a vehicle repair on the eastern portion of the site. That's just right off of Hydraulic. The proposed sign will be constructed on the western portion of the site along the I-135 highway frontage. This application is being heard concurrently with the variance to permit an increase in height to the proposed off-site billboard sign from 30 feet to 60 feet to raise it above existing maturing trees. The variance application is contingent upon the approval of this conditional use. This case is focusing on the question, is this a proper site for a billboard? So the height issue isn't really being decided in this case. That's a separate case that goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals. The applicant intends to lease a 60-foot by 50-foot section of the western edge of the property along the I-135 highway frontage for the construction of the sign with the intention of advertising messages for goods and services to motorists traveling along the highway. Off-site billboard signs are permitted in general industrial district except within 300 feet of residential zoning or residential uses. And that is key here because there are residences in general industrial in this location. So it's not just whether they're zoned residential, but are there residential uses? Let's see. The abutting property to the north is zoned SF5 single-family residential with a single-family dwelling approximately 185 feet northwest from the proposed location of the off-site billboard sign. And if you could go to the first photo in this, yeah, back up.
Would it be this one?
No, the one previous to this. Yeah. This map here shows the location of the billboard, which would be in this general area here. And then they've drawn sight lines to the various residences. And the one to the north is the one that's 185 feet zoned in SF5 single family. The properties abutting to the south are zoned general industrial, but are developed with single family dwellings. One is 153 feet from the proposed site, and the other is 199 feet from the proposed site. And then the property along the west side of the map is I-135 right-of-way that's been recently expanded for the North Junction interchange improvements. So where you see those arrows kind of pointing out the 60-foot height, that's actually going to be where one of the ramps goes to connect in with the new improvements on the North Junction. This photo shows a mock-up of what this sign would look like coming over the trees. Wichita Sign Code permits the MPC to conduct special review of the placement of off-site billboards within 300 feet of residential zoning and uses. If the application is not protested or the city council District Advisory Board makes the same recommendation as MAPC, then the MAPC decision is final. Otherwise, the application must go to City Council for final action. If the off-site billboard is permitted, it shall adhere to all other standards of the Wichita Sign Code. The sign code restricts the dimensions of the off-site billboard sign to 14 feet by 48 feet, though it can have up to 5.5 feet extensions from the top of it, and can have also extensions 2 feet beyond the other three sides, the sides and below.
Can you explain these pictures a little bit?
Yes, I actually just haven't gotten
Oh, okay.
here yet. So the maximum area of this sign would be 825 square feet, and the sign code requires a minimum of 330 feet between off-site billboard signs. I point that out because one of these pictures I'll be showing you has an existing billboard sign on it within this corridor and within view of some of these homes. And I've already mentioned the variance with the 65-foot height. That will be discussed separately, but otherwise they will conform to all other elements of the sign code. The nearest off-site billboard facing the same direction of travel on this same street, or they're actually talking about I-135, is 850 feet south of this site. And that site is, or that sign is also 60 feet above, or 60-foot height, which is what they're proposing to do. The comprehensive plan identifies the subject property as appropriate for residential development. And so let's go to these other maps here. This is the site.
That's not an accurate depiction.
No, this is a little bit older, so.
Yeah, it should be up to date and relevant, because that
Well,
isn't relevant.
Unfortunately, we only get our aerials every so often. This house is no longer here. These buildings are no longer here. That's been acquired for the ramp construction.
Not to mention, the
200 feet.
acreage, 200 feet of our property was also taken by the state.
Yeah,
And so that
right,
puts it that
right.
much closer to our home.
Yeah. The site is actually just on the east side of these trailers here. So right in here where the sign would actually go. So if you go to the next slide, this is showing the zoning for the area with the general industrial in the gray. The property just to the north side of that is in SF5, but unfortunately it doesn't show up too well with the other white and
The three properties to the north of that
yeah.
are single-family residential.
Mhm. So next slide, this is the comprehensive plan that shows kind of the, mostly in residential area, nature of that area in terms of the actual land use. This is showing the site right off of Hydraulic where the auto sales office is. The picture below that is the home just to the north. It would be just to the right of the auto sales office.
So this stuff is all current?
Yes.
This is current, yes. This side is showing, the top here is showing the two trailers I pointed out, and the sign would be constructed just on the other side of that. Yes.
What this picture doesn't, you can't really see, is this house is next to the street. There's a red brick house right back here, and that's us. And then we lost the 200 feet behind the house, and so that puts the property, his property butts up right next to ours.
Okay. The lower right picture is showing the other side sign that exists just down the highway. It is visible from the homes that are on this south of the site. So they can actually see this sign, as they look south.
850 feet away.
Yeah, well, 850 feet from the proposed sign site. So it's actually closer.
It's at least 700 feet from my house.
Yeah, yeah.
Councilmember, Ballmer, I'm gonna go ahead and ask the residents to refrain from asking questions and comments until Stephen with planning is done presenting his staff report, just because we do have to have minutes of the meeting.
Okay. And so you could go to the next set of photos. Okay, this is the house that the sign would be directly behind it. And then this is sort of their view of that sign on the top right.
So would the sign be behind those trees or it's behind the house?
Well, that's the existing sign that's to the south of like 850 feet from where they're proposing to do this other sign. So that they can see it from the end of this street. The picture on the lower left is another house just to the east of the house closest to I-135. And then this is the final picture here is just looking down that street. I think that's 37th Street, if I remember correctly. 39. Yeah. In looking at this, the land use compatibility guidelines in the comprehensive plan state that the industrial and major commercial land uses that generate pollution, odor, noise, light, safety hazards, and high levels of traffic should be located away from residential areas and developed with screening, buffering, and site design features sufficient to mitigate adverse impacts. The applicant intends to keep the mature trees along the north and south property lines, which will buffer the site of the off-site billboard from nearby residential uses. The addition of an off-site billboard sign at this location will introduce visual impacts and light pollution closer to the residential uses than current impacts associated with the nearby interstate highway. So they are admitting that, or we are admitting that there'll be additional impacts to the residents. Based upon the information available, staff is recommending that the request be approved subject to the following conditions. The sign shall not exceed 60 feet in height as shown on the site drawing submitted by the applicant and shall be developed in accordance with the approved site plan and elevation drawings. Only one off-site sign will be allowed for this zoning lot. The off-site sign shall adhere to all applicable setbacks. The applicant shall obtain all permits necessary to construct the signage, and the signage shall be erected within 1 year. And the sign shall conform to all other requirements of the City of Wichita Sign Code. So, any questions?
And I couldn't really see in here whether or not this was to be like a you know, a digital sign, is like the LED sign restricted in this, or is it just a straight up like
I
traditional
think it's
billboard?
more like the billboard sign you saw, because if it were LED, that we would have to have that in the report.
Okay, so since it's not in there,
Yeah.
that means that they wouldn't be able to put an LED sign up, and it's gotta be one of these, and probably with like just lamps
Yes.
underneath it to light it at night, but no, it's not emitting its own light, it's the lamps.
Right. Any other questions?
Anybody else have a question?
So this is an existing sign that you want to raise higher to go above the trees, right?
No, this is a new sign.
It's a new sign.
Yes, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. The existing sign is the one that's 850 feet to the south of this site.
That'll be staying.
That will stay.
Okay, okay.
This is being added.
Okay.
So in this picture, just for clarification,
That's a mock-up.
that's a mock-up,
Of
and
what
that's,
it-
that sign that we see in there is not really there, but that's what it would look like if that sign
Yeah.
would be there. And that underneath is showing why they would request it to be the 60 feet as opposed to the 30
Right,
feet.
yeah, the white dotted line would be 30 feet, and then it wouldn't be able to be seen from the highway.
Am I allowed to ask one question?
But just real quick, on your mock-up though, the White House that's depicted there, isn't that the one that's scheduled to be RAS?
No, that's
That's the
existing.
existing.
Yeah, the other one has been, this is current in terms of, the first one that showed the aerial, that's, unfortunately, that's 2021.
So the-
But this
So
is
the second
current.
house there to the west is the house depicted in that?
Yes, yeah.
And is that the owner of the property where the sign's gonna be?
No.
No, it's separate ownership.
It's what, it's on the government right away? The sign?
No.
No. It's in the property behind their backyard.
So the owner of that property is the one that's applying for the permit to build the sign?
The auto sales property that's off of Hydraulic, they're the owner of the property where this company is going to lease land from them and build this sign.
I got it, thanks.
Do we have additional questions from the DAB?
And is the applicant here or anybody representing them?
I don't see
Not that
Mr.
I've seen,
Ferris.
no.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. So the purpose of this meeting is for them to decide whether a sign is appropriate or not appropriate
Right.
So the height has nothing to do with it.
at this
Right.
time. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Councilmember Ballard, and we can open it up to the public, if we have public present to speak on this, you guys have 3 minutes.
Okay.
If you could just come up here.
Sure.
That would be great.
Obviously, I'm in opposition. As the picture up there is not accurate, as stated. This house has been raised. The property line actually comes across this way. They've taken over 200 feet out of our property, which is here. The proposed sign is going to go right here. That puts it within 150 feet of Craig's back door. It puts it within 100, I believe it was 185, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Puts me within 185 feet of my house.
And all of those mature trees, those were all taken out.
The trees that
He speaks
the
of.
gentleman speaks of that he would leave there do not
Don't
belong to
belong
him
to
anyway,
them.
they belong on our property.
They are our property, trees, not his.
The only reason we changed all of this area over here the single-family residential is try to protect our properties from such atrocities as a 140 square foot sign in our backyard. I can honestly say that nobody here would want that in their backyard. The only reason the city is okaying it is because of the zoning that the city imposed on this area here, thinking that all this would be a big industrial complex. They can go in there and tear every house down. I've lived there over 40 years. I've tried to get the zoning changed, but all these people think that their little quarter-acre piece of land is going to be worth a gazillion dollars when big industry comes in there to raise all the properties, which will not happen. We're trying to protect our residential area. These have families, just like you have families. We've raised our kids there. Our grandkids are coming there to play. The city says that the trees will not provide significant protection. They admit that there will be light pollution and other things coming with that. And the only reason they're willing to propose it is the city does not care that this is a residential area. That's why they zoned it this way. Anytime we complain about anything that happens in the neighborhood, the city's response is basically, well, you shouldn't live in an industrial area. Well, I'm sorry. We've lived there 40 years. We bought that from my parents, and now it's going to be a third generation. Craig bought that from his grandparents. And he's carrying on the legacy of that house. We do not need a 60-foot sign there. This person does not care about any of the residential areas there,
And chooses not to live there.
and he chooses not to live there. It's just an investment property. All he's doing is trying to figure out how to squeeze every dime out of that piece of property, and that's why putting a sign in our backyard. I assume that's my time.
Sir, can you state your name and your address for the record?
Sure. Scott McPhail, 4045 North Hydraulic, which is this property right here. Carl Jacobs, 4051. 4041 North Hydraulic, which is this property here, which is affected by it. And then I think Craig wanted to say something else. So do you want to say anything, Wilson?
Sure.
I would say get closer to that, because if you're watching from home, you can't hear around.
Okay.
I usually watch at home.
Oh, sure. I was just going to say that this, like I said, isn't a realistic realistic example of what we're actually dealing with because of all of that property having already been taken. It doesn't show you the amount of the mature trees that were taken. And what the city referred to as the mature trees that the guy said would be left are not his mature trees. Those are on our property, not his. So he can't say, I will keep these mature trees, because they're not his to keep. So, in fact, he's actually cut down some of our mature trees in the past because he wanted his business to show better from the interstate. So, it's an unfair, in my opinion, for someone to come in and pollute that area with another sign. And yes, there's one 800 feet away or 700 feet away.
Which is very visible.
Which is very visible, but that isn't where the property is. That's actually along I-35 in this area, which it's road. It's not where the actual properties are here. It's along the road, I-35. So that's not really even an exact comparison, because we're not talking about a sign along the interstate. We're talking about one that's here, this not near the interstate. So this is dead right in the middle of residential. And while it's unconformed,
Originally, that was all residential, and like my husband said, they came in and made it so it wasn't in the process of thinking that at some point it would be taken out, but it hasn't been, and so I don't see why he should be able to come in when he won't live there in the neighborhood. He chooses not to live there, he just chooses to pollute the atmosphere for the people that do
And
live there.
chooses not to keep the property up, as you can see from the other pictures on the back.
Yeah, fences falling down and whatnot, and so what's he gonna do? He's not gonna probably maintain the sign, but he's allowing that and allowing a fence to fall down and look bad in our neighborhood, but he chooses not to live there. And as my husband stated, I don't think there's anybody in this room that would go, hey, I'm okay with that. I don't mind somebody sticking a 50-foot and two-foot extensions, 54-foot sign in my backyard and lighting it up, whether it's digital or whether it's just floodlights coming up, it produces light. And so I don't think anybody would say, hey, I'm okay with that.
Dan, can you state your name and your address for the record?
That's fine. Dorothy Jacobs MacPhail, 4045 North Hydron Lake.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name's Craig Davidson. I own and live at 1540 East 39th Street North, and I also own what is left of 1528 that would have been directly to the west that the highway tore down for the expansion. From my garage to where they have pinned their markers is only 25 feet. So half the sign is going to be behind my garage and towering over my house. It's too big. It doesn't need to be there. The sign to the south was recently enlarged this last year. It used to be a much smaller sign, a lot closer to the highway. If you see the house on the south side of the road, that hedgerow went all the way to the south. It's all gone. That billboard that was down there, 750 feet, was next to the highway behind those trees. We never saw it. When KDOT moved it, because they had to for the owner, it went up on a 60-foot pole and got bigger. We had no say. It was far enough away. This, yeah, it's just going to tower my house. It doesn't need to be there. That's all I had. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I noticed in some of the pictures, Mr. Davidson, there's some trees, and were those his trees or your trees that were, because you said they were removed in the backyard?
I have a maple tree currently right next to the driveway. It's about the same size as my house. There is a large walnut tree on the back edge of my property. It's one that he says will stay, but I bet he cuts up on it to try to make the sign even more visible.
And that's right on the fence line?
Yes. I don't mind the car lot being back there. I put up a wood privacy fence so I didn't have to see it. There's nothing I can put up to block this out. And, yeah, it's just horrible.
How visible is the light from the sign 750 feet away?
750 feet, it's not bad. 150 feet, it's going to be terrible. And the highway doesn't even have any lights through there. Their lights are farther south at the 96 interchange and farther north at the 254 interchange. I don't know if they're going to add any more. You can't tell with the construction right now, but it's dark at night. Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak? Anybody from the DAG have any questions or comments?
I think I have maybe one question. If you go back up to the staff report, right in there, where it says the recommendation follows right there, where the recommendation is based on the following findings. You got 1, 2, 3, 5, and then a 6 below that. think that follows the golden rules here. So it looks like number 4 was left out. Number 5 is relative gain and not conformance of the requested change. Conformance of the requested change is actually number 6. So it looks like 4 and 5 were left out, and it seems to me like those were probably left out because they were things that did not support this sign. The relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare as compared to the loss of value, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any gain to public health, safety, or welfare to a sign going in.
There will be a
There
loss
certainly
of
could be a
property
loss.
values. Definitely.
So if number 5 does not support the sign, and number 8 is opposition to the neighborhood residents, we can't choose that on its own, but it can stand with another one. It seems like those two are grounds to not approve that. Is that correct?
I'd say you could definitely make that. I did not write the staff report, so it's a little awkward for me to address that, but you could definitely cite that as a factor.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I would make a motion to not approve the staff recommendation for a conditional use permit.
I would second that.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So the vote is unanimous to deny the request.
Staff's recommendation, correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So is this going to planning again? I don't know, I missed that part.
He has a question for you.
Oh, yes.
So has this been to planning yet?
It goes to, let's see, planning commission.
Thursday.
Thursday, 1:30.
This Thursday.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Can I ask a question about what this, the protest petition?
Did he already leave?
What was the question?
He's here.
He's
The-
over here.
This
Oh, I didn't see it.
protest petition, what is that?
So that's if you're protesting the case itself, and those, you can fill it out and file it with the city clerk.
Okay.
So even though it's denied here, it still goes before.
Susie might be able to ask.
Let me, if they really get you at the MAPC, then you have 2 weeks to file your opposition letters, your forms.
The protest.
Yeah, the protest forms. You cannot turn them in prior to the hearing. So you have to wait until after the hearing and then you have 2 weeks. Isn't that right?
Yes, and you file those with the city clerk.
And you should come to the
Definitely.
MAPC. We will. We've already taken off work.
Where did you
That
find?
day, on Thursday.
These are the golden rules that they go by.
Yeah.
You can take that.
Thank you.
And you will get a copy of that. It just shows what's allowable in each different zoning.
Yeah, unfortunately, where we're at.
Councilmember Ballard?
I
Yes,
thank
you
you
can go
very
ahead and
much.
move on to the next item.
All right. Looks like we have a presentation for the Wichita Downtown Streets conceptual plan.
Yes.
All right, welcome. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it more than you know.
And the room empties. It's a late night. Thank you for fitting us on your agenda. My name is Tia Ramad. I'm a transportation planner with the city. I have Allison Fletcher with Nelson Nygaard here with me. She's going to co-present. This plan began in 2018 and it went through a year and a half of public process. I will belabor it, but it's in your packets. Several pop-ups downtown, several open houses, a lot of public process in the year 2019 leading to 2020, and it was last presented to the DABS in 2020. And I'm a new employee at the city-ish, And part of my new job responsibility was to pick up this plan and move it forward. And I realized that it's been 2 years, but the content of this plan is still as relevant as it was in 2020, and I hope you will bear with me tonight while we present to you the ideas in the plan. This is the Downtown Streets Plan. To shift your thinking, the downtown streets are from Murdoch to Kellogg, Washington to the Arkansas River. Those are the basic boundaries of downtown. Through the public outreach that went into this plan, 7 core values or ideas behind this plan, and the downtown streets prioritization emerged. Really, it was about active transportation and enhancing the safety and health of the experience of non-car users downtown in the core. We have a lot of vacant buildings in the downtown core that are currently being redeveloped. And schools are coming into downtown, and there's going to be a vibrant community on the streets in the downtown core very soon. And so I will read these to you, and I don't mean to read slides. I will not do that moving forward. The first value is or goal was to enhance the safety and health of the downtown streets. Broadway, as an example, is one of our most dangerous corridors for pedestrians. We want to provide mobility choices for all users, and I'll get to that and who the mobility choices are and who the all users are downtown. We want to prioritize active transportation options. Right now, they're forced to share lanes with drivers, and that's not always the safest alternative. We want to promote vibrant neighborhoods. We want to maximize infrastructure. We want to embrace innovation and technology, and we want to foster consistent economic development. We have heard from the development community that they like the ideas in this plan. More information, the entire plan is 24 chapters. It's available online. I put the first chapter, which is an executive summary, in your packets to give you the big broad spectrum of ideas. Next slide, please. I'll jump ahead a few more. There's the website, overview and processes. Go ahead. In order to pick up a plan that had sat on ice for 2 years, we had to construct some way of exercising it and getting it out in front of various advisory boards and groups. We didn't have a lot of budget remaining in the process here. So we couldn't do a big splashy open house. An online presence was already created for the plan. It was fairly robust. But we do have a lot of advisory boards within the city of Wichita. And this plan, we had city council, actually we didn't have city council. City council appointed a new advisory steering committee for this plan. We had a technical advisory committee along the way. And I have made a point of presenting this to Advanced Plans, the Transit Advisory Board, the Bike Ped Advisory Board. I'm going to talk to every single DAB that will stand still and listen to me and plead for a recommendation for City Council to endorse this plan. Currently, there are programmed $5 million in the CIP to begin improving downtown streets in the next year's annual budget, and that's a continuing amount up to, I think, $20 million over 10 years. So it's a substantial amount of money that could be poured into the downtown streets and improve safety for all users. So with each of these groups, I dutifully took notes and had people in the room with me helping me. And we did a question and answer. And every time somebody asked a question, we would record it and record the answer as well. I provided that to you in your booklets, and we hope to make that part of the planning document. Go ahead to the next slide, please. This is just an overview of some of the things we heard. A lot of concerns about quality of life, safety, policing. When people think of downtown, they don't necessarily think of the most safe part of Wichita. And that's something we heard over and over and over again. And that's something this plan is trying to remedy. Go ahead to the next slide, please. You know, I mentioned all users, and people don't believe me when I say, you know, in the city last year, we had 100,000 people choosing to make rides either on bike share or on scooters. That number is astronomical. I mean, those are individual trips, but these alternative modes are being used, and they're being used by the next generation. And we really should pay attention to the trends that are happening. Right now, it's illegal to ride a scooter on city sidewalks, so they have to travel either in the traffic lanes or in bike lanes, and we need to make those things safer for those users. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And this is a heat map from the scooter company. It shows you where the scooters are going. And the darker the line, the more traffic they're seeing on these streets. So this is just I'm not suggesting we build scooter lanes wherever scooters want to go, but it's indicating to city staff that we need to provide safe routes for travel.
I'm sorry, did you say that the scooters are not allowed to ride on the sidewalk?
That's correct, sir. Yes. We have
I
an
don't like
ordinance.
one, I just didn't realize that was
And I realize they do ride on the sidewalks in some places, but they are not supposed to be there.
And you can't ride bikes either.
Yeah. Please go to the next slide. And I just wanted to point out that we do have good transit ridership on the Q line. We have 3,000 rides monthly. So we have a good number of people coming into downtown that are pedestrians and are interested in using the downtown streets differently than somebody who would drive their car in there and do their business. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Allison Fletcher to you. She has worked on this plan since the beginning. She comes from Boston, and she is a transportation planner extraordinaire. And she's going to explain the details of the plan in ways I can't, so please listen to her.
I'm excited to be back in Wichita for this great purpose, visited many times during that process. So I just wanted to get into just a summary. You do have the packets with the report. There's lots of information online, but just talk about some of the general principles of what's in the recommendations. I would say first, we can go on the next slide, is that, you know, downtown is for everyone. Many cities are looking at transforming their downtowns, making sure that it's inviting for everyone. The idea for this project originally came out of the Project Downtown plan, was to recommend looking at streets and how are the streets relating to the downtown uses and getting more safety to happen on them. So this map is got a lot of detail in it. There's lots of layers in here. But basically the color of the lines is telling you how many through lanes are proposed. The darker it is, the more lanes there are on a given street. It tells you which streets are going to stay one way, which ones are going to convert to two-way. It also mentions where there would be biking facilities. We want to have a very clear biking network. Right now you have some patchwork of lanes on certain streets, but not a complete network within the downtown. We also want to simplify.
Alan's ready to go.
So we have people on Zoom in this meeting. I know we had people on Zoom in the last meeting. Okay, sure. Yeah, so we're just getting back here. I can still describe what's on the map itself, but we want to have transit focused on Broadway and on Douglas, and having people going in and out of the transit center. And so on the slide after this is just a recommendation for. It both gives a highlight of where those recommendations are on the next slide, but also the phasing. And so you can see here where the blue, the navy blue is. This would be the near-term recommendations. So that would be some two-way conversions on Main Street, on Market, and on Topeka, and Emporia, which has already been completed. Enhancing the bike lanes that are on 1st and 2nd Street to have vertical protection and buffers. Right now there's painted buffers, but having more physical vertical separation on those. Having a road diet on Broadway and on Waterman. I'll talk a little bit more later about what that looks like in terms of what that means. And also having a two-way conversion on English Street. So the sequencing here is the navy blue would be our recommendation for what happens in the near term. We made some recommendations before in terms of prioritizing and aligning things with where funding is happening, with what's happening where on streets. And we did some updated recommendations on some of the sequencing. So in the second phase, more like 4 to 5 years out, those would be the yellow lines here. So some enhancements on 3rd Street, on Broadway, and on Waterman. And then some of the other improvements, could be sequenced from there on out. So some of these recommendations for the near term and the medium term are more like paint and vertical buffers and restriping, some signal tweaks, and longer term stuff that takes more time to organize capital is like moving curbs or rebuilding things or taking some of these designs a little bit further. So on the next slide, this is just a summary in text of some of those things I was mentioning. So near-term recommendations would be Market, Topeka, English, and Main. Midterm, Waterman and Broadway. Long-term, looking at some of these like complete rebuilds and then reimagining some of the streets once we've been able to test how those concepts worked out in real time and evaluate them as they go forward. On the next slide, there's a recap of just what's already been done. So Emporio Street, if you want to get a sense of like what a two-way conversion looks like, just that simple restriping and redoing those signals has had a lot of changes on that street. Even during my visit here, I've benefited from it now being two-way and not having to go 4 blocks out of my way to get to a destination within the downtown. And I work in downtowns all across the country, and you have a lot of people sometimes. I was like taking a Lyft to an airport in a downtown, and my Lyft driver just like drove the wrong way down the street. They're so wide, and there's all the lanes going in one direction, so certain people will just, especially for people from the outside or somebody that doesn't frequent the downtown a lot, it's not as inviting to have to go out of your way to figure out how you're navigating the downtown street system. On the next slides, I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly, but these are just some layouts of just the cross sections of what these could look like in the downtown itself. The first one is Market Street. So this would be an example. Market and Topeka are very similar, so we actually could just stay on Topeka here. So these are streets that don't have very much volume of traffic, so there would be a lot of, it would be pretty conducive to take the 2 lanes that are going in one direction right now and having them be two-way. This would also allow us to fit having a contiguous all ages and abilities cycle track on the streets where the bike lane would be on the curb, there'd be a painted buffer, there'd be a floating parking lane between that, and then you'd have the 2 cars going in either direction. At intersections, you could add turn lanes and drop the parking lane and things like that to kind of get those to function. The trade-off on these, on both Topeka and Market, is there are select blocks where some parking spaces would have to be removed. That said, on other streets in the downtown, we would add more street parking given some of the recommendations. So we can push forward after Topeka. We get into English Street. This one's pretty simple, kind of similar concepts, but just the width on that street, you're just getting parking on both sides of the street. On the next slide, there's Main Street. So taking that very, very wide one-way street and getting a street that's going two-way in both directions to get a little bit more functionality on that street. On the next slide is Waterman and the concept for getting, this would be a road diet, so going from 4 lanes down to 3 lanes. You get just as much throughput, capacity, and function in a 3-lane cross-section, but then you also get the room to put a protected bike lane on each of the curbs on that particular street. And Waterman's a great street for biking to get connectivity east and west to and from the downtown. On the next slide, we have getting into Broadway. I have a few slides to talk through Broadway. Broadway is under 20,000 cars a day, which is kind of our litmus test for is it conducive to a road diet? Can it carry the amount of volume that it has today, going from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, and then having the people that are trying to turn left in both directions, blocking the through lanes, all getting in alignment with each other, and that opens up the ability to add more parking along that corridor, adding some enhanced bus stops along the corridor. So that would be conducive to, in the long term, the long range plan for this is to have more retail and other ground floor uses that would want to have more access to the curb alongside that street. On the next slide is us having taken, we had one of these charrettes that Chia was mentioning, and we worked with the community to do some concepts and draw up what this might look like block by block. We took this to different stakeholders along that street and talking through what this means in a block by block basis. The next slide is kind of an explainer graphic to just talk about this road diet concept that I've been mentioning in terms of, this is just a hypothetical, this is not necessarily a specific block in Wichita, but going from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, you get the cars in alignment. Cars that are trying to turn are able to see more clearly the people that are approaching them in the through lane rather than being kind of catty-cornered to each other, not being able to see past each other when you have 2 cars trying to turn left at the same time. And when you do this, you get another 10 to 12 or 14 feet of right of way, depending on the size of the street, to allow you to add things like on-street parking, or it could be protected bike lanes, or it could be bus enhancements. On the next slide, this is just an explainer to kind of talk about this concept of converting one-way streets to 2-way streets. As a reminder, we're recommending that on Main, on Market, Topeka, and a couple other streets. And the things that we see, many different downtowns are doing this, and there's just dozens and dozens of downtowns that are looking at doing 2-way conversions, and they're seeing more retail commerce, more business vitality in the downtown, because people are able to access businesses from both directions, and you see things and you don't have to drive 4 blocks out of your way to get back to that. That's twice as many trips in the downtown that you don't need. That's like twice as many intersection conflicts where people are having to make multiple turns and having even more intersection maneuvers. It's also much more inconvenient for people that are biking in a downtown to have to go way out of their way to get on the street that they can actually bike in the right direction. So it just provides more intuitiveness and options for everybody. It also can slow and calm the traffic speeds that people are traveling when people don't have that friction of going 2 ways on a street. They might drive at more dangerous speeds. They also might arrive at intersections and not be conditioned to look in all directions. You're just looking for where the cars are coming, your biggest threat, and you don't actually look at the person who might be crossing the street. So it can lead to more walkability outcomes in the downtown itself, which is why they're so great for downtowns. I'll just talk about the next steps. So if this plan were moving forward to adoption, every single project that's within here, each corridor would probably be its own earmarked thing that would have to go through engineering and design, have to get a survey, figure out what can go where, and each of those will have an opportunity for public input, whether it's about earmarking the funding for that project, whether about going through the concept design itself, whether it's going through a piloting phase, actually constructing it. You know, they can put things out with cones and bollards first, and then eventually you could also take it forward with curbs and other things that make the design more permanent once you've worked out tweaks in the super duper long term. So each of these would have its own implementation process where there could be more engagement and refinement of the concepts themselves. And the last slide is just talking about process. It's recapping what Tia mentioned earlier. This has been kind of a dust-off process. Everyone was so busy and distracted with what was going on with COVID back in the end of 2020. And we've kind of gone through this process to re-socialize the plan. We've made some tweaks to it. We've updated some of the maps. And we really thank you for your time to listen through where we're at with the process now, and look forward to your comments and questions.
Questions from there?
I have a question. So I like walkability and the ability to use bikes and alternative modes of transportation. I also like on-street parking and bike lane buffers and things that make things safer. But I think probably 90% of the traffic on these streets are cars. And so I know Public Works really likes the 3-lane street as opposed to the 4-lane street because it's safer. But I kind of also think we need to deploy that in a smarter way so that we do leave some of those corridors open for car traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So that you don't, I mean, the last thing I want to do is find myself on a 3-lane street behind a bus that stops every 300 or 400 feet and no way to get around them.
Mm-hmm.
So is there something in this plan that kind of designates which streets we want to be open and walkable and which streets we want to kind of maintain as traffic corridors?
Yeah, so there's kind of a hierarchy inherent in that map itself. I think in the actual plan itself, it gives a bit more coding to which streets are what streets, because not every single street in here is a transit street, and not every single street is a biking street. Kind of your transit streets are Broadway and Douglas, your biking streets are 1st and 2nd, Market, Topeka, Waco, Waterman. And so we're trying to think through prioritizing a biking street every 2 to 3 blocks, and still sustaining a lot of capacity on streets like Main. Douglas is going to be a future process, looking at what happens with Douglas itself. But there's quite a bit of capacity on a lot of the streets, and the analytics that we had for them to continue functioning, having people traveling at calmer speeds, but still sustaining a lot of the performance that it has.
Okay, and then my next question, you talk about making it more accessible by eliminating some one-way streets.
Mm-hmm.
What effect does that have when you have a big event downtown that lets out and you're trying to let a lot of people out of the city quickly? We don't have as many one-way streets as far out of downtown, but we also don't have large events like that. How does that affect the ability to get those people out?
Yeah, I've been here during events during some of the times we were here, and we met with the arena and other groups. We've also met with a number of the employers to talk about their influx and outflux of employees coming in and out on a given day. The thing with events, typically in transportation planning, you're trying to plan for the everyday and having the everyday be safe. And events have a bit of an override system where they shut down particular streets or they override the signals. They have traffic directors that are out there. So we've observed some of those recommendations. There is a segment about event management in the recommendations itself. But I think that there's definitely like human systems for making sure that that stuff still functions. And there are some streets that would stay one way, First and Second Street, or some of those that we recommended because there'd just be too large a trade-offs for converting those with all the different things that are trying to happen on that particular street. It's a good consideration.
No better advertisement for a bus than watching them get where you want to go before you do. Step behind.
So, just a tangential, is the transit center is still moving to Delano, is that right?
Yes.
So, I don't know how that plays into this, but, I mean, I agree with Mark. I think the basics of this plan sound good.
Yeah, and that question came up before about the relocation of the transit center. When we were doing this process, it wasn't yet certain that it would relocate, so we thought about which streets should be transit streets a bit agnostically of, is it still in the downtown or is it going somewhere else? Which streets still make sense for carrying transit? You know, transit has a higher propensity for function where there's concentrations of residents, concentrations of businesses and employers, and also just where there's the right of way for it to function well and being intuitive. So we did think through that, but I still think that those would be the recommendations for what streets make sense to carry transit, given the connections in and out of downtown.
What about the walking bridge? Did that stay in the plan?
The walking bridge across the river near the Century 2 area?
Yeah, south of there. I mean, that would be, if you're gonna have walkability and you're gonna be able to get to the transit center, so you can go out in the center, seemed like that would enhance the reason to have a walking bridge.
Yeah, I don't think that's not in our maps in terms of, because the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan process was also going on.
Legacy Master Plan that
Yeah.
had the walking bridge inside of it.
Yeah, because that part's definitely going hand in hand with a number of different plans that are going
I
on.
haven't heard anything different, but it wouldn't be.
Yeah, pull it out.
You can take the
Addendum. Other questions, comments?
Anybody else? Questions? Okay. Clayton?
I don't think I really have questions per se, but just to reinforce a few points and maybe address a couple of questions a different way there is, well, I guess there is one question. Vehicular traffic volumes on Douglas. Last numbers I saw was Douglas was sitting around from Seneca to Hydraulic. Pretty much the entire corridor was like 14 to 17,000. Is that roughly right?
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do believe it is under 20,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my point in that is my memory of the last numbers, which I'm often not looking at the very latest, granted that. The traffic volumes at, say, Douglas and Washington, Douglas and Hydraulic, is the same traffic volumes in Delano. Yet Delano, with 2 lanes, can handle the same traffic that the 5 lanes in downtown in Douglas Design District are. So, to me, if Delano can handle that traffic volume in 2 lanes, it can more than handle it in a 3 lane. 5 lanes is, if anything, excessive. From my perspective. And the question of, the cyclists, the transit, backing people up. Just before COVID, we had one weekend where, Lambert was doing a concert at Intrust. There was a ball game going on, and Asian Fest was going on at Century 2. So, I don't have it immediately available, but it's on YouTube. I have video cameras on my bike, and I try to cause a traffic jam. I just did laps from Maine to Douglas.
These guys love it when you tell them how you're causing traffic jams.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually the point, is I rode on the outside lanes for about 3, during the peak traffic, I had one guy follow me for about 4 blocks. Everybody else just went around. So I already caused a 3-lane, and I was lonely in my lane. Nobody was there. So the traffic volume, I have no concerns at all in that regard. And also on the traffic, I am not sure that 90% of the traffic there is vehicles. I'm going to guess probably 2/3. And I base that off at times that I've taken videos, drone videos, and pictures. When I go back and I actually count, first, there are a few cyclists already on the street, even though the facilities are minimal. But if you look off the street and you look at the pedestrians, you look at the cyclists, which technically illegal cyclists, illegal scooters on the sidewalk, and you actually do the count, most of the time, at least a quarter of the traffic is on the sidewalks. So there's the idea of how do you define traffic? For me, traffic is a commute, getting from point A to point B. Your mode is irrelevant, but we're used to counting only vehicles as traffic. And I think that's a false count. It gives a misleading judgment of what's going on. Last one, I'm going to see if I can get lucky here. Anna, if you could go to the wichita.gov and do a search, and this is bringing up the safety question. There was a study done that I mentioned before. If you do a search for Wichita bicycle and pedestrian crash trends, 2020. Wichita bicycle and pedestrian. Crash trends, 2020. We're testing your IT department. See if you find a PDF there. Oh.
I can't see from down here.
Ah. Okay.
You can always send us the link too on.
Yeah, I think I saw where you're one link away though. If you scroll down just a little bit more. I thought I saw. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, planning and policies. Yes, that's what I'm looking at there. And then scroll down. KU School of Medicine. About halfway down.
Here it is.
There you go. 2020. If you go to page 11. Oh, I think that's it. Yeah, try 11. So this is a study done in 2020, recording a decade worth of crashes from scratch, looking at the actual police reports. So from a safety perspective, especially for people that aren't driving for whatever reason, top 3, Broadway, twice as dangerous as any other street. Second and third, Douglas, Central. Those are all in this project. So basically, the top 3 streets of all of Wichita are all encompassed in this plan, and by far outpace the rest of the city. Now, caveat is this is all of Wichita, but if you scroll down, if you look on the top page there, Broadway, where's the cluster of traffic accidents, even within Broadway? If you scroll down, you'll see the same pattern for Douglas and Central. Even within Douglas and Central, the cluster is downtown. So if you want to improve the safety of Wichita as far as who gets hit, how often, where, I think you would get your most bang for your buck in downtown. And that's all I had.
Thank you. It's very helpful. We would love to bring this to city council this winter. I'm looking tonight if you guys are ready for possible recommendation for endorsement. I'm losing my ability to speak.
This has been at all the other DABs.
We just came from DAB 1. You're the second DAB we visited. You hold all the streets that are in our plan. Commissioner Ripple?
Half of them. What do you guys think?
That was that one really cool. The only comment I have about, I think it makes sense. I actually think it's not intuitive at all to me to think that one-way streets are less safe than two-way streets, so I really appreciated your insight onto that. I've always found that surprising. And I would just encourage going forward to be even more less friendly to cars. I work downtown, and just anecdotally, like I with Clayton 100% here, that downtown can see a lot more traffic before it becomes anywhere near as uncomfortable as it should be to drive a car. And so just keep more. That's it. But thank you for your presentation, it's very helpful.
Thank you for your attention this late in the evening.
I would say the only thing that makes me nervous is all of the, we'll say flack that I'm catching about McLean.
I can
I
imagine.
mean, the education piece, I don't know how we can do it better. People don't understand, and when they tell me, I can't even get around the car in front of me, I'm like, that's the point. That is exactly the point, is to slow traffic. People, yes, people don't understand, and so that is terrifying to me, only because I'm hearing such pushback on McLean that it doesn't make sense, and it's always because they're in such a hurry. So I don't know how we can do better telling that story, making it easier for people to understand. Just, I don't know, it makes me really nervous. I understand it and I agree with it. I just, doing that to the core of the city and just hearing on a half a mile, how just people are so shook about it makes me a little nervous to do it to the core of the city. So it makes complete sense to me. I just don't know how we can do better telling the story about why we're doing it, because it's, we have a million cyber engineers really quickly, they just don't understand. So I don't know what that looks like, but I'm super supportive of the project. I just worry about doing that to our whole downtown.
I appreciate that.
Different because it is the core. People thought of McLean as this, superhighway to the north end or something. But the core has this condensed character anyway. And yes, we need to build on it. You have the separations between the bike lanes.
Sure.
The safer it is, the more people are going to use it.
Yeah, like I said, I'm super supportive of it, 100%. I don't know how we do that better. And even that, I know the McLean project was way before my time on council, and I know how much engagement there was, and there's still gonna be people that we don't reach, and I understand that, but I don't know what that looks like, but.
Shown that the McLean improvement, and I'm citing Gary because I heard him say this today, there's a 40% reduction in the crashes when we do this to the roadways, and we take it from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. Allison, you're really a national expert. She came out of Boston. She works for one of the biggest firms. I'm sorry to put the pressure on you.
If there's any city that's a traffic disaster, it's Boston.
Here's some special treats.
Yeah, well, your points were reminding me of just the one thing we talked about in the last session we were at. It's just everyone is a pedestrian in downtown, whether you drive there and park and then are walking to your business, you're walking to get to the bus stop and things like that. And so inherently people are a bit more conditioned to a little bit of delays to share the streets and make sure everyone's safe and getting to where they need to go. So yeah, the land use context is a bit different. I think with each of those implementation processes for each corridor, it's a chance for education. We did a process when we were doing engagement with this of getting postcards out to every address along, like in the downtown area a few times, and can try to do things like that and like the messaging boards to kind of get the word out again.
I think you have Emporia as a case study, if you will, to showcase, hey, you know, it works, this is how it works, what's going on North Broadway between 13th and 21st, and bikeability as being kind of the driver. I think we all can agree that having, you know, we all want to drive more traffic, however you define traffic downtown. I mean, all these businesses are investing in downtown. There's a reason for that. So I mean, I think, you know, you put all that together and you have a good narrative of positive reasons.
And just to clarify too, I mean, this is multi-phase plan too, so it's not like dropping a bomb on it. So on the one hand, you're gonna have to hear about this for the next 20 years, but on the other hand, it's conversations that have one large.
It's near-term stuff.
This is the early conceptual plan. It's not necessarily going to happen, you know, in the next 5 years, but we would like to get the design started. And each step of the way, I think there was a slide in the deck that showed that there's a public process at each step. So that we will get to test and learn as city staff as we go through this. And, you know, I'm not saying it's the savior, but it is the thing that other cities our size are doing. And it is revitalizing downtowns, and we're seeing an economic development benefit come in other places that have done this.
I was gonna say again, I'm super supportive. I
understand.
want to, yeah, make sure everybody.
We feel your pain.
Feels like we know what's
I
going
drove
on.
her up and down McLean today.
Okay, one more question?
Comment for you on the, I'm going to call it education and public perception. I'll work with Anna for just a minute after the meeting here, so that she has the link, is when we talk specifically about McLean, I drone video recorded that in half-hour segments at 9th and McLean, while it was a 4-lane, while it was a 2-lane.
I've seen it.
And as it's a 3-lane. And part of it is in each one of those, they're half-hour, 20 minutes to half hours, depending on how long the battery would last on the drone. In each one of those, I recorded rush minute. What's the busiest 60 seconds? And so far, I've challenged about 24 people of, when you see the traffic jam, hit pause, tell me where you're at on the video. I've had no responses. I've also recorded 13th Street, showing what a left turn looks like in a 4-lane. Those are very clear, and people understand it much better as far as the technical experience of it. So I already have those. Most of them are already published on YouTube. I'll get my little trying to cause a traffic jam video on there. If there's other things that would be of assistance in that regard, I'm highly cooperative.
Please send me links.
Yeah. We are going to get Anna the link here once we're done with the meeting.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
I live on McLean Boulevard at 10th and 9th Street. And I have to go west on Central and turn north on McLean. Somebody's put little vertical cones all along in there, so I can't use that to help me merge as I northbound. I have to yield to traffic to my left. Well, the traffic to my left, I drive an SUV, and it just happens to be my gigantic blind spot on that SUV. So I quickly lose situational awareness of what's coming up on me from the left and what I have to yield to. And I've got cones to watch out for on the right. It's a very dangerous situation. It just makes me mad every time I see that. And I wish some idiot had not done that, just left McLean Boulevard alone at that point. I was going to the city council meeting 2 weeks ago,
going down McLean Boulevard southbound, and they had just put the track down in the 9th Street. And some street people had pulled a couch out of the woods and armchairs, and they were sitting on that island, drinking out of cans, smoking. I don't know what they were smoking, but they were waving at all the traffic going by. Having a great time on that island. Well, it was very distracting, and people were swerving to avoid that thing. They weren't expecting that island to be there. There were a bunch of people on couches sitting there waving at them. Now, the couches have since disappeared into the woods again. But I just wish they had put that crosswalk down there at 9th Street where it belongs. And now we have rubber cordons, the tubes that go across the street, and all night long, there's cars going over this. Just give us a break, you know. They made it a wonderful smooth surface for motorcycle racing now. And it was a project that didn't need to be done, as far as I'm concerned. The street was passable. We've got homeless people that are living out in the cold in the winter, living outside, living in a bridge. I would like to see some money spent on getting people out of public view into some kind of decent situation.
We're working on that.
Before you go
That's cool.
maybe cancel the media. Cancel the media.
And like I said, Maggie had nothing to do with
Yeah.
that whole project, and we need to, I would make a motion that our dad would suggest that this plan move forward.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. I just have a couple comments really quick. The fire department mentioned that the new fire station, temporary station 23 is open at 13th and West Street. Very excited about that, excited to kind of see the data for the numbers of calls that they'll be making for the, well, anybody in the area, but mostly south of the river. Also, today was the day that the complete bridge closure started. So hope that everybody will find a detour. I apologize. We know it's super inconvenient for everybody. There's not a good solution except for we need to replace the bridge. So please give us like a couple days or a week before you start bombarding us. But we do want to know. You know, we don't know things until you tell us. So I would appreciate any feedback for the bridge. Also on the 22nd, we're having our District 6 coffee just from 9 to 10. It's right here in this room. Just anyone wants to come and ask questions or chat or whatever you want to do, we would welcome you to come. On the 15th, what's on the 15th?
October 15th, that's the Vamos Fiesta. We're at No More Plaza.
From 4 to 10. Correct. I think that's it. Anybody else have anything to share?
Yeah, we have the Dia de los Muertos in Plaza Nomar 2,
Yes.
October 29.
Yes, and what time is it?
11 to 11.
11 to 11 at the No More Theater, right, in the parking lot?
No, Plaza
Or-
Nomar,
At the Plaza,
the
okay.
National Market.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you everyone for coming.